The Security Weekly News is live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern Time most every week. I try to scan and produce a quick look at some major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Jason Wood, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you will look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Follow us on Twitter for live stream reminders, highlighted clips, memes, and more. You can find us at Sec Weekly. One word, Sec Weekly. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly News, you can check out securityweekly.com/ESW323, and you will find all our show notes and all the news details that we're going to be discussing today. There are 40 of them, but that is largely because there's a ton of fundings. We had a week off, so we missed a week's worth of fundings. And there's 17 fundings and I think 8 acquisitions. So you take those out and it looks more like a normal news week. We also have Mr. Tyler Shields with us. Hello, Tyler.
Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing today?
Doing pretty good. I enjoyed the first 2 conversations we had. Very kind of the theme for this quarter is practitioner focused. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of very nostalgic for me.
Yeah, taking you back to your roots, to where you came from.
Yep. I don't know if I could go back. Every time I consider a job change, I consider going back, and I don't. I haven't.
It's better of it.
It's a rough job. Somebody's got to do it, but it's I don't know if I could go back. All right. So lots of interesting stuff to talk about, because it's not just 17 fundings and 8 acquisitions. Like, if you look closer at some of these acquisitions, I think we're starting to see some of the stuff that we've been predicting. I think we're starting to see some companies that realize they're not going to raise another round, and have to look for an exit. And it's interesting. Like one of these jumbo was like a B2C, like personal privacy product. Like it would like help you protect your. I think it included identity protection, that kind of thing. But you connect it to your different Googles and Apples and all that, and it tells you when you have things misconfigured, and it gives you advice and things like that. But then they pivoted to B2B, and killed the consumer product and just started looking for a buyer. And Coalition picked them up, which is insurance. What is the acronym? MGE, something like that?
Not sure what that acronym is.
Yeah, it's basically like a cyber insurance technology company, in other words. I'd have to pull up another window here to check that out.
Yeah,
but,
it's interesting. I was looking through the fundings before the show, and I was looking through the acquisitions before the show, and I certainly have macro discussion points that I think we can dive into for some of this stuff. But funding, right? When you look at, and I didn't Google every single company, so I'm not sure of the primary position and primary bucket that each company fits into, but I am starting to see some consistent themes of certain things that are apparently being funded, right? We could start to talk about cyber insurance seems to be getting some stuff, or seems to be getting some cash. Identity-based companies, identity-based security, using the identity as the perimeter, seems to be catching some cash. Anything that's security of or around or in AI security is obviously catching some cash. No-code, low-code is consistently catching cash from the app security side. So when we start to think about the things that are catching cash and, think about the forward developments of that, it starts to show some trends. The other thing I want to throw out there is the what isn't catching cash discussion point, right? We're not seeing a lot of the traditional SOC analyst, endpoint, all of these things that are very mature. There's not a whole lot of innovation coming in those spaces, which is really neat to me to see, because usually you see the cycles, right? Where it'll push a certain market by innovating, like the funding will push a certain market by reinventing a market or innovating, and then there's a cycle where it doesn't do that and it's brand new ideas, and then it cycles back to innovation, disruption, then brand new ideas. And so I think just looking at the funding at a high level starts to knock out some of those trends as well.
Yeah, and one of the things we're seeing for the first time is a bunch of startups focused around protecting AI. Here. Yeah, there's at least 4 of them. I might not have tagged them all, but they have a slightly different funding and then AI in parentheses there.
Yeah, and they all have different angles, right? Like some of them are data centric, some of them are infrastructure AI, infrastructure centric. I even received a pitch from one that hasn't quite been funded yet recently that was more about being a proxy, an inline proxy approach to security of AI, right? More like an API sec or a WAF sec for AI. Lots of different ways you can do it, but I don't think anybody has clearly determined how to do that properly yet. Obviously, Daniel Miesler's research is getting the closest to describing how that can occur, but I don't think anybody's figured out the right way to properly secure AI. And I guarantee you, CISOs are not looking at this going, "Hey, we should be buying 6 tools: one for AI security infrastructure, one for proxy."
Like everything else,
like they're not,
it's going to need.
I promise you.
Yeah, there's going to be no feature parity, and there's going to be consolidation, just like everything else, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of money flowing into that AI space, right? A lot of these, almost all of these, are 10 to 30 million if they have an AI knock next to them, right? They're not raising little bits of money either.
Yeah, 5 of them. 5 of these 17 are AI-specific security startups that are just coming out of stealth. Yeah, 23 million for one of them. Go ahead, Katie.
It seems to me that there's a lot of shiny object chasing here, and especially coming off.
Always.
Don't give me that look, Tyler. Don't give me that look.
Oh no, that's a look of total agreement, Katie. That's a look of VCs are herd mentality lemmings.
But coming off the last 2 conversations, we know that SIM as it exists today, and similar technologies, the older school, if you want to call them that, the legacy technologies do need innovation. They do need advancement. They do need some freshness infused into those markets to make them usable in today's environments, because they're not. Even starting with that first section with Eric, just talking about they basically can't keep up unless they're charging people $1 million per year, right? And yet the VCs are going after AI and some of these other quote unquote more interesting spaces. And sure, that's great. We definitely want to be pushing the needle as far as innovation goes. But we also want to be not forgetting that there are other areas that are ripe for innovation as well.
Yep, no doubt, for sure. Totally agree with those comments, Katie. Absolutely.
Yeah, good eye on that one funding that was not recent. I don't know what happened there.
Those sneak through. We wiped it off the list. No harm, no foul. Yeah. We're not even going to see the name. So by the time they refresh it, they won't even know it's gone.
The company that shall not be named is no
16.
longer.
Did I say 7? I meant 16 fundings.
Let's talk about acquisitions, though. That's the more interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yes, certainly. And it's funny, like in a lot of these, I know one of either the acquiree or the acquirer, but I don't know both. Like I've heard of RiskLens. I'm not familiar with Safe Security. I've heard of Cybergrx. I'm not familiar with Process Unity. Yeah. And a lot of them, like I haven't dug too deep into them because there's so many, but a lot of them use language suggesting maybe it was a merger. Maybe we're seeing cases here where 2 companies couldn't survive on their own, and it wasn't but they also couldn't afford an acquisition, because one of these, which one of these is it? It's Safe Security and RiskLens. They're both Series B, right?
Yeah, they're both pretty healthy, big companies. Yeah.
Right, and I think this is the one where Safe Security, I think they raised like a 50 million Series B, and there's no in April, and there's no way they're using 100% of that to bring on RiskLens. Is that the one? Is that the right one? But yeah, and that one looks mostly like they really wanted so RiskLens had the Founders for Fair, which is a pretty popular quantitative risk framework. So both Saket Modi, he's the safe security guy. Who's it was Nick Santa and Jack Jones are the two folks at RiskLens that are also basically responsible for running and creating FAIR.
Yeah, I worked with Jack quite a bit when I was at Misty, which then ran InfoSec World, and he was fantastic. Really great to work with, smart guy. This is kind of surprising to me because this must have been a great offer because they seem to be doing really well on their own. So.
Yeah, and there's no PE company in here. There's no mention of other funding or anything like that. Both are Series B. Like, I suppose if, I don't know what the valuations are here, but, I suppose Safe Security could afford them if they spent most, if not all of their Series B on them or maybe didn't need their Series B for anything else. But I think RiskLens had raised over $20 million. So even if they spent their whole Series B, like, that's not a great multiple, right?
No, it's not. And I was just looking up how much. So Safe Security has 99 million total invested.
Yeah, including
a 50 million in April of this year. Yeah, and a 33 in July of 2021. It's interesting. A lot of these, and I'm not saying this is the case here. I have no idea their run rate. I have no idea of their market penetration, any of that. But oftentimes now what we're seeing is these large late rounds that were so overvalued are now being compressed so far, and companies aren't growing as fast anymore when they're bumping up against running out of capital to operate, either Safe or RiskLens. I'm not saying either one did, but this could be the case. They can't get funded. They can't get funded because of the structure of the cap table, of the ownership table, prior to after they took that last major round and then depressed from 800, 900, a billion, whatever, down to 300 million. It just doesn't work anymore. And so you might also be seeing, like, I don't want to call it fire sale acquisitions, but certainly, like, hey, we can't really raise right now, even though we're doing great as a company. Maybe we stalled because of the macroeconomic conditions, and it just makes sense to liquidate the company into some other entity. And I don't know that's what's happening here, but I do think you're going to see a continued increased pace of acquisitions in the second half of the year and into Q1, Q2 as more companies bump up against the end of their funding runways.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wonders if this was an acqui-hire, specifically the Safe Security RiskLens one, but it'll take a couple months before we see any evidence of layoffs, before we can look at LinkedIn and see the employees trending. Well, and of course, if they rebrand, if they don't keep the name, it can be really difficult to tell, what the details of that, both private companies. So
yeah,
we just don't know.
I'm looking at the numbers, Adrian. And RiskLens took 20 million in April 8th of 2019. They were up against the end of their funding cycle. I mean, almost guaranteed that they didn't have much more runway left, and it probably just made sense to sell the business into something bigger, something fresher.
Yeah. And there's a pretty big one here. TPG picking up ForcePoint. So that's TPG is a PE shop, global alternative asset management firm. Okay.
PE firm.
Get fancy about it. Yeah. So I haven't heard a whole lot about ForcePoint. ForcePoint was the combination of Raytheon's cyber stuff and WebSense, rebranded. God, it feels like forever ago. Maybe it was 2013, 2014. I forget when that happened.
Golly, your memory is amazing. I didn't remember any of that till you said it.
Well, you saw my physical pain in trying to recall the information. Like, I was plumbing deep.
If you go to ForcePoint's product site on their web page, you can go to the product drop down. They do every TLDR.
SASE. Yeah.
CASB, ZTNA, SWGR, BI, ZTCDR, 1 SSE, DLP, Enterprise DLP, Risk Adaptive DLP, Insider Threat, SD-WAN. They do the whole shebang.
Nice.
So, yeah, this is one of those. It's probably throwing off decent, consistent cash. TPG's buying it low at a decent price with the expectation they're going to run it up at a somewhere between 5 and 15% annual growth rate and continue to milk the cash cow for quite a while, make it more efficient.
TPG is going to talk to SDG, and they'll combine it with the remnants of RSA or something. I don't know.
And it'll result, you know what it'll result in? It'll result in an ITGAF.
Yeah, 3-letter acronym. PE companies will get together and just smush legacy security vendors together.
Yeah, because that works every time.
Every 70% of the time, all the time. What is the quote?
Exactly.
From Anchorman. All right. SCADAfence got picked up by Honeywell. It's an OT vendor. I don't know a whole lot about the OT space, but I imagine it could be kind of a similar thing. OT isn't. When was the last time we saw an OT company get funding? Like, I feel like that. The industry's done funding that kind of stuff because there was a whole bunch of them. There were like 30 OT security companies, and some of them, I think a few of them just shut down. So I imagine this could have been a similar thing where their last round was a while ago.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the OT space to really make commentary on it either. It's about as popular as mobile security these days.
Oh no, it's more popular than mobile security. No, they raised it's just called a venture round after their Series B in March of 2023, 16 million. So they should have had some money. But maybe this is a decent pickup. There's not a whole lot of. I don't think there's information on any of these acquisitions on the actual deal details.
Not any of them. They're not. That's a new thing, right? Because nobody wants to admit what the valuations are anymore, at least not publicly.
Well, it would hurt both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So number 21's interesting from an international relations vantage point. Bitdefender, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think is Bucharest, Romania based, acquired.
I know the founder is. I don't know if the company's based out of there.
I totally could be wrong about that, but either way, they're acquiring.
No, you're right. Romania. Mm-hmm.
Harangi Cyber, which is based out of Shanghai?
Singapore.
Singapore. I knew it was an S. Sorry, I read the article and then forgot which S it was. Singapore-based company, Harangi. So that's kind of interesting, too, that we're starting to see some bigger companies get acquired out of nations where we haven't seen those acquisitions rolling in before. Now, this one just happens to be rolling into a Romanian company, right? But Bitdefender's a big brand. They're a nationally, globally recognized brand.
Yeah.
And so for them to pick up a Singapore-based company is an interesting pattern we should keep our eyes on as we move into next year. Are some of the bigger brands going to go shopping overseas as well?
Yeah, and we've started seeing more and more startups out of France, out of South
America.
Certainly a ton out of Israel, of course. I think that's easily second biggest next to the U.S., but yeah, all over Europe as well. So yeah, it makes sense we'd start seeing some of those get picked up. And yeah, Singapore is pretty healthy cybersecurity ecosystem down there as well. A lot of funding for it.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So that was 21. None of these others that I really wanted to touch on. Again, I know Cybergrx. I don't know Process Unity, so I can't really speak to that very well. Apparently, they're both TPRM related. So Cybergrx, their goal is to help you speed up answering vendor questionnaires. To speed up that process. The idea that maybe you can just answer one questionnaire and then use that over and over multiple times of course, in practice, there's issues with that. Like, what if one company I'm doing business with uses Cybergrx and another that I'm doing business with uses another one? I still end up filling out the same questionnaire multiple times anyway. Because those Cybergrx isn't sharing the questionnaire results with their competitors. So, let's move on to, second time we've seen a massive valuation correction, number 26 here. Sneak sees valuation plummet by over 50%. Not nearly as bad as what we saw with Cyberreason. I think was more drastic. Was what, like, I forget what the percentage was, but it was like order of magnitude. Yeah, it was like 2.3 billion to like 250 million or something like that.
Yeah, it was 90+%. Yeah, it's interesting, the funding history when we talk about Sneak. And I don't have it all in front of me. What I'm looking at actually is a LinkedIn post by Pramod Gosavi, who's a VC, and he just cracks me up with his wit. He's a very, very funny VC. If you get a chance to follow him on LinkedIn, I highly recommend it. But he has the amount of funding and kind of the valuations from 2020, January 2020, they did 150 million Series C, where they became a unicorn. 9 months later, a 200 million Series D at 2.6 billion. 6 months later, now we're in March of 2021, a 300 million Series E at 4.7 billion. 6 months later, September 21. So this is all of what, 16 months, 17 months.
Peak insanity, September 21, 2020.
Yep. 530 million Series F at 8.5 billion, led by Sands Capital. So
that was peak Tiger Global right there is what that was.
Well, Tiger Global did the E round. Sands Capital did the F round. What's interesting about this article, though, and I highly recommend you dig into this article, is the methodology of repricing and how the market has to figure out how to reprice these. What's happening is these folks are now selling in the secondary market chunks of equity, which is now essentially marking a new price for this equity, right? So in the latest deal, there's $6 million worth of shares that somebody's selling at $6.85 a share, which brings it down to, I forget the exact new valuation, but whatever it is, 50-60% less than the peak. And so 3.3 billion, a 4 billion drop from the peak.
3.3.
Yep. The new valuation.
Because they've raised 1.2.
Yep. So former SNCC employees and early investors are doing secondaries left and right, trying to unload the stock. And each time they do that and somebody sells $5, $6, $10 million worth of their shares, that's a new mark on market, right? And so the question is, do the investors have to now mark this down in their portfolios? How does that represent back through to their LPs? A lot of things that are going to have to come from this. And Pramod posted a really good question. Why doesn't SNCC just go get acquired, right? Like, move on from this thing. You're done. You're not going the right direction. And he made a great point. He put a case in point that a great fit for them would be Palo Alto Networks to acquire SNCC. Mm-hmm. Because most of SNCC's go-to-market is now top-down compared to bottoms-up, which is where they started. Now they've converted to a top-down methodology, and they can leverage Palo's expansive capability to sell, right? It's a perfect fit. And I countered in the conversation, and said, the real question is, do all the investors, do they have the ability to set aside that dopamine hit that they got by $8.5 billion valuation and say, hey, this thing's only worth $3 billion now. It's still a great exit. We're going to go ahead and sell it. That's going to be the literally the $1 billion question.
Yeah. It's not going to be easy to do that either.
I think somebody like Palo picks them up, or somebody like Google picks them up. He also makes a good case for Google, but Google grabbing them. I could also see Microsoft picking them up. Another good spot for them. So
I don't know.
The question is, can they get out of it?
Yeah. And it's if it's happening to Cyberreason and if it's happening to Sneak, how many other? It's happening to everybody to some extent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that unicorn list shrink significantly, and I think there's still that hope among a lot of companies that, oh, the market will just rebound. And I think VCs, other investors, and CEOs really have to start adjusting their expectations. I don't think we're going to see what we saw 3-5 years ago. I just don't. I could be totally wrong. Tyler's really the investment guy here, but from everything I've read, from everything I've heard from other people, we're not going to go back to that. So those crazy valuations and the hopes of either a massive acquisition or an insane IPO, I don't think we're going to see it, at least not in the next 10 years. I think it's going to take a long time, because every time I read something like Bloomberg or the Wall Street Journal, Tyler, you're laughing at me, and I'm going to let you respond in a second, but it's like, oh, we're so close to a recession. But we've been reading that for 2 years. We've been reading it for 2 years, and we still haven't hit rock bottom. So this isn't going to be a quick fix.
You know, I'm smiling, and I'm definitely not laughing at you. I'm smiling because of the history of the .com. I heard these exact same stories in 2002. It's going to take a decade or more to really respond. And yeah, it's going to take a period of time. But one thing this world is really good at is forgetting the lessons of the past. We continually do it. So give it a handful of years where it's going to be a slower growth. It'll still continue to grow. The market will do great. The economy will do fine. We're all going to make, consistent growth. And then someday, some spark, right? Something is going to light it afire again, and the stupid hubris will come back. And that's why I was laughing. Is we, as a species, we're just so good at forgetting our lessons learned. We're just not good at remembering stuff like that.
No, I totally agree with that. But I think, we've been hearing recession is coming for 2 years. So we're not there.
No.
And you have these CEOs, especially these startups, these young CEOs who are thinking, oh, piece of cake, 5 to 7 years, I'm going to, be making $40 million, whatever it is. And they're going to get bored at some point, because this isn't what they thought they were signing up for.
No, what they're signing up for now is to build a business, to build a real business that makes real money and not just funny money on top of free.
That's not what they signed up for 5 years ago. They thought they were going to get in it, work really hard, make a bazillion bucks, and go on to their next startup.
And those ones will be filtered out. Yeah,
sure.
They have to be. Hey, Adrian, I don't know if we have it in our list, but can we talk briefly about the Orca Whiz lawsuit?
Yeah, that should have been in here. I don't know why it didn't make it in.
It might be. I might have just missed it in my scan, but
no, I think you're right. I think it's missing. I'll add it while you launch into that.
Yeah. So just to kind of update folks, there was a lawsuit filed by Orca claiming that Whiz violated and stole patents from Orca.
More than just patents.
I don't have the entire. I stupidly have the wrong image up here. Hold on.
So the acquisition was that they infringed upon, I believe, the patent and were basically copycatting all the technology.
Yeah, and I made a comment
shot
when
back
I heard,
and said, well, instead of innovating, perhaps Orca should just, or instead of filing a lawsuit, perhaps Orca should just go innovate. So it's a little bit of a pissing contest going on over there.
Oh yeah, that made me laugh out loud. The commentary about if you can't compete, you sue kind of thing, which made me chuckle. And I even posted a comment on it on LinkedIn and social media, and was basically saying the same thing. Like, really, if maybe this is an alternate way if you can't compete to go ahead and try to sue your way, but it feels very desperate from Orca. But and this is where I'm going to put a pin in it. There's some additional stuff has come to light since the original post, some more detail, and I will post a link to Pramod. Again, Pramod Gosavi is the person that I see who has posted it first. Doesn't mean he was first, but it's the first one I've seen that actually shows the two patents side by side that were written by the same patent attorney. Major problem there. And basically the two patents are almost identical word for word, including imagery, layout, and everything in the particular diagram. Now, what I see is a comparing one page to one page of probably much larger patent. Okay, so I'm not making a judgment call here. I'm just looking at this one piece of data and going, well, maybe there's more to this lawsuit than just desperation of an inability to compete in market. There might be something more here.
Yeah, and they in the actual filing, the legal complaint, they show that and they list all that, but they also point out like even the marketing stuff is like copy paste. Like they use the same taglines, they use the same coffee vendor. They point out they use the same like at events. They're down to how they describe the product and market it is literally like a copy paste. So it doesn't look great.
No, and I was completely flabbergasted when I actually saw it, because I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, okay, it was copied, but I'm like, well, same attorney. Did they just cut and paste? Were they stupid enough to just cut and paste? That's not a good sign if they were.
Yeah, and Orca was clearly, founded like I think a full year before. Whiz?
Well, full year before, but then the article goes on to say that the Orca folks pitched Microsoft, where the founders of Whiz were working post-acquisition from Adalom, where they got acquired into Microsoft. Orca pitched Microsoft on the Orca product, and almost within a very, very short period of time, like within a matter of a couple months, Whiz not spun off, but the team quit and formed Whiz and went and executed. Now, it's probably one of those situations, where two people came up with similar ideas and were executing in parallel. That was at least my first thought on that kind of like timeline till I saw the patent stuff. And then it's like, well, maybe not. Maybe there's more to it.
Yeah. I don't know how that works in the courts, but there's certainly a lot of evidence that shows them doing almost exactly the same thing.
And talk about a big financial.
What kind of liability does the lawyer have in this, the patent attorney?
Oh, there's two lawyers. They hired away two lawyers. One of them was a patent attorney. The other, I think, was like counsel or something like that. I forget if it was inside counsel or outside counsel. But yeah, that's something that somebody else brought up that I was talking to is there, somebody getting disbarred out of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is crazy. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, this is silly. It'll go away. And the more I read about it, the more I realize, wow, this one's going to be fun to watch over the next 2 years, because it's just a big target, right? Wiz is, quote, the fastest growing cybersecurity company and potentially the fastest growing company in history.
Themselves. They're bragging about going from 0 to 100 million ARR in 18 months.
And if that's truly the case, that's a great target to sue.
Yep. Oh yeah. I'm sure we'll see more on that as the legal wheels start to roll there, and this won't be the last that we talk about it. I did get it added. It should be story number 38 once the website updates. Yeah, let's see. What else do we have here? Microsoft rebranded Azure Active Directory to Microsoft Entra ID, something no one will remember the first time.
We will continually call it Microsoft's Entra ID, formerly known as AD.
Yeah. I mean, it's Microsoft, like, maybe they have like a chief rebranding officer that needs to keep busy or something like that, but they even rebranded threat actors, came up with their own threat actor names, and now we have like Typhoon this and Storm that.
Yeah. There was a whole article about the craziness of the threat actors, I think, in Wired, and about the threat actor naming, not about the actors, but about the naming and how silly they were.
Yeah, the naming convention.
Yeah, and I guess the convention is actually set to the animals represent the countries. Something like that, like Red Panda, or Panda was China.
Well, that's CrowdStrike. That's CrowdStrike.
Yeah, okay.
system.
Yeah, and then Microsoft decided that's not cool enough and had to do their own thing, but that's so silly.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, Defender's now tied to everything, where it used to just be the AV, the endpoint security agent. And now you've got, Defender for cloud apps, and, there's like 11 Defender products now. They're just making it so hard to keep up with their products.
Well, and
So
not only that, but
go ahead.
Go ahead, Kate. Nope, you go first.
So I help with the descriptions on our adapters. And this problem with Microsoft specifically took about 2 hours of my time this week because we had to rename them and figure
Mapping
out. It was, that is 2 hours of my life I will never get back. So shame on you, Microsoft. Shame on you, because it's just not that important.
Shame on Microsoft's chief rebranding officer.
Yes, you made everybody's life really annoying.
Here's the thing that I question though. Is Microsoft stealthily and silently dominating and looking to dominate the cyber market? They now have so many product lines. Well, stealthily in the sense that they're adding new product lines, but I'm not hearing people going, hey, be careful, Microsoft is running over cyber. Like, I've not heard that storyline being presented publicly very often. I just keep hearing, like, literally, I think it was yesterday, a new announcement from Microsoft that they're launching the SASE, which I think is the stuff we're talking about, their entrance into SASE, right? And then the rebranding of...
We say SASE. Come on, man.
I hate sassy,
He just can't say sassy.
Whatever.
He feels really silly.
They're entering yet another freaking cyber market, right? And it's like, okay, right. They got that. They got their endpoint stuff. They got GitHub. GitHub is kind of stealthily taking over some AppSec capabilities with SCA and static analysis. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the breadth of what Microsoft offers from a cyber platform vantage point, it's getting bigger and bigger every day. But nobody's calling out the fact that, hey, Microsoft's dominating the market, and they're really running it over.
I think they have been. I don't think anybody's making headlines, but Microsoft invested a boatload of money a couple of years back and said, we are going to be the biggest cybersecurity vendor, and they're just doing their job.
Yeah, there's plenty of coverage.
Plotting away.
When they hit the 10 billion mark, there was a lot of coverage about that, and more recently, I think we talked about it here. About them being close to the 20 billion mark in annual revenue on security.
So if you want to play with the best, work for the best, contribute to the best cyber company on the planet, am I hearing you should go work for Microsoft?
Not if you look at what goes on with Azure. What was the latest thing? Like they somehow lost. No, the latest breach. So they somehow. China was able to forge basically access tokens to get into people's, key people's Outlook and OWA email accounts. And there's no details yet on how that key was lost that was used to forge these OAuth IDs, basically. So, and just it seems like every other week, there's some massive, cross-tenant vulnerability in Azure or something like that, where it's just everybody's data is exposed. They're not. It's funny because they're building this massive. They're becoming this massive security vendor, but their own security isn't giving people a whole lot of confidence.
Has it ever?
There's another way to look at it, though, right?
Fair enough, Tyler.
They never said they wanted to be the best security vendor. They said they wanted to be the biggest. I think if you asked them, they would say they are the best. But the flip side of it is, if you are the biggest, your target is like this. Yeah. If you're a small company, there is that perspective, right? They have more products, more surface area for people to go after them.
So if we believe that cybersecurity is a massively growing market, and I think we all probably would agree with that, right? We would all say, yeah, cyber in general is massively growing. It's one of the most consistent growing, tends to be one of the most resilient to downturns, et cetera, right? It's a good, safe market on the broad sense of the term, right? Then really the only two that matter from a large player vantage point at this point is Palo Alto and Microsoft. they're not so quietly, I guess, now after hearing your guys' data points, they're not so quietly trying to dominate the world. And you might end up with a Pepsi Coke type of thing when it comes to cybersecurity. Everybody's going to go to one of those two vendors for all of their offerings.
Yeah,
it could be a good article.
Yeah,
I think that's we can make a case for that being good, and we can make a case for that being bad.
CrowdStrike is pretty big as well. I'm not sure it's just those two. Yeah, interesting. Well, and there's a lot of consolidation to do this year, so there's an opportunity for somebody else to become the next Fortra, right? Like there's definitely the opportunities out there to pick up. Somebody just needs to get the funding backing, and there's all kinds of stuff to scoop up here over the next year. What else did I want to mention before we get to the squirrel stories?
Adrian, I'm still mad at you for calling me out on SASE versus SASE. I'm so upset.
Deal with it.
He's just being sassy.
He is. So regulation here. So the White House came out with a document that I think dives into some more. I haven't had a chance to look at it. Literally, like this details came out earlier today. But the cybersecurity strategy implementation plan. So I assume this goes into more details on what was in the original national cybersecurity strategy, because one of the things that it called out was we need to figure out how we're going to do this. And then also the SEC rules that we've been talking about quite a bit, that have been kind of contentious, have been delayed, so pushed out to April 2024. So I guess we'll wait and see what kind of changes happen to those before they go into effect. You have to share what kind of cybersecurity expertise you have on your board was one of them. I forget what the other one was. I think it had to do with how quickly you have to report a cybersecurity incident. All right, and squirrel stories. There's I don't know who they've got at Red Canary. This is Susanna Clark-Matt puts together this fantastic article for Red Canary, why Taylor Swift fans should work in cybersecurity, and it's a treat. It's I love this kind of these kinds of, it's not an article, blog post, this kind of humor. It's there's a lot of boring marketing out there. I'm in marketing. I try and make sure our stuff isn't boring, but I'm not sure I can get away with going quite this far. And I love that Red Canaries enabled her to write this.
My man, I'll tell you what. I was listening to some of the, I don't know, what do they call them? The Taylor fans. I don't remember what they're called.
Swifties.
Swifties, thank you. I was listening to some Swifties on I don't know if it was a podcast or something my daughter was watching at one point, and how much they dissect every word, and the thing is, Taylor plays into it. She plays into it for years now, for a decade now. She's been planting little seeds, little things, little tips, little like long con kind of plays that these folks are picking up on. And I just think it's a total hacker mentality. I love it. I think this article is actually not only funny and snarky, but 100% correct. It's a very similar mentality from hunting attackers as it is to trying to find the one little nugget that Taylor Swift said in 2014 in an interview that really showed what the future direction for her music is, right? And it's that maniacal diving into something and pushing through no matter what to be able to find the prize, right? I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a great article.
Susanna gives 13 reasons here, and I'll just read the first one. You go check out the blog post to read the rest. But the first one is you like a good mystery. Swifties are investigators by nature, and threat actors almost always leave a trail of clues when they break into a system. And there's GIFs also. You got to go check it out.
Absolutely great piece. I love it.
And then the other squirrel story here, maybe I should have done this in reverse. This is maybe the less entertaining one, but kind of tickled me that Google Calendar now allows you to specify where you're working from throughout the day. And I just cannot imagine the organization where I'm expected to tell people what coffee shop I'm at, or whether I'm in the office or at home. Like this is not a feature. I can think of a few situations where it might be convenient, but most of the situations I can think of, absolutely not. As long as my work is getting done, you don't get to know where I'm working from.
Mine just currently says in my pajamas on the couch. That's what mine says 24/7.
Yeah, in my pajamas on the couch.
Yep.
I recently read something about that. I don't remember where it was, what article it was, because, I don't want anybody knowing where I am at all times, and certainly not based on my phone or my computer or any other digital thing I might have. That tracking to me is creepy and none of your business. But a bunch of teen and 20-somethings, their perspective is, well, it's so much safer. We know where our friends are at all times. We can keep an eye on them. We know everything about them. They know everything about us. What if something happens? So
that's
they're
a very different relationship, though, from employer, though.
Of course it is. But if they have that perspective, that attitude, it will pervade all areas of their life. They don't care. It's like, hey, I am where I am. I've always had this little device with me. It shows where I am at all time. It doesn't matter. Their parents probably were tracking them. That's the first thing they did when they got their first mobile phone. I don't know how old you were when you got your first cell phone that could do that kind of tracking, but it wasn't 16 years old. I know how old you are. We didn't have that.
I think you might be selling them short. Yeah, I think they're smart enough to recognize the difference between allowing your parents to track you and your employer.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't think they're not smart enough. I think they just don't care because it's so part of their life, ecosystem, culture, mindset. I don't think it's a smart or not smart thing. I think it's just.
I gotta disagree. Like a lot of the folks you're talking about, like don't even have their real names or personas anywhere online. Like they don't even share that. I know a lot of people in that generation who are very privacy conscious.
It's going to be interesting to see how that continues to play out from a privacy perspective. But I'm actually going to press on you, Adrian, on the need for this thing. Hybrid companies, the ones who say you got to work from the office 2 days a week, 1 day a week, 3 days a week, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
It actually does help quite a bit because you can set recurring, like every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm working from the office. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I set it from working from home. And that way, when people make meeting requests with me, they know whether to grab a real conference room, my office, put a Zoom in it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it'll have some value from that. I don't think it'll have any value with regards to like literally the GPS location of what coffee shop I'm at, but I think the macro.
But you can also put on your calendar in office, remote.
Yeah, this is just making it so you don't have to put a banner on top of each day, right? It's actually just embedded into the days. And then it's smart enough, actually, the feature's smart enough, because I've had it since it was in labs, actually. I've had it for a while. The feature's smart enough to know when you book an appointment, it can now say, it'll automatically add like a Google chat to it if you're remote versus home and things like that. So you can leverage it in a better way.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's probably how it's intended to be used. But I guarantee you it will get abused.
Oh, for sure. Everything goes straight to, the internet troll world will come out no matter what it is. All
right. I think that's all we've got for today. Thank you so much, Katie and Tyler, for joining us. Katie for the whole day. Tyler for just lazily walking in on the last segment.
Right. 1 hour. The 1 hour of power. Again, that's about all I.
I love you both. Thanks for joining me today, and a big thanks to everyone for watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We will be back next week.